Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, anthology time is here. That's right, we're talking about Amelia, part of Trilogy of Terror on Kill by Kill Bite Size. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal Patrick Hamilton coming to you once again from a high-rise in the middle of Los Angeles somewhere. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters, or at least that's what we usually do. Because it's an off week, we've decided to do another little mini-series where we try an experiment of how do we do this show while not watching an entire fucking movie. And so right now we've decided to do one segment of an anthology film and see if y'all like that. So let's see how it goes together. It'll be a wonderful experiment. And of course, there's only one person I trust to remember where she's located. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
Sorry, I'm just sitting here trying to grab a knife out of a frantically flailing little doll's hands
with your fingers. This is the wildest fucking idea I've ever seen. Like, I know she's frazzled. She's going through a lot, right? But this little doll is sawing through a suitcase, and her decision in her mind is like, I'm going to grab that knife, you know, from the sharp pointy end with my tender fingies. That is not a plan.
Even though this little doll has already, like, you know, carved her up like a turkey, so.
Right. And does not need that knife. It has a spear. It has very sharp teeth. Like, it is shown multiple times that it knows exactly how to get by murdering people in modern society, even though it's been magically chained around the chest this entire time. All right, so let's introduce what exactly we're doing here. So we haven't covered a bunch of anthologies on the show. We've kind of had them mapped off, like, you know, maybe we'll do this, maybe we'll do that. And Creepshow was the big first foray into maybe tackling an anthology. And one thing that we learned was that the longer it went, the more people got tired of it, which I think is a fucking shame. But the numbers don't lie, people. Around the fourth week, everyone's like, okay, I get it. Creepshow. So what if what we did was we take the best, the bloodiest, the most ridiculous segment of a horror anthology, and we just talk about that just for one quick off-week episode, so we all get to talk to one another, but we're still talking horror, but we're not going all the way through something like Trilogy of Terror, which, Gina, had you seen this entire thing before?
You know, I think I only have seen this segment because I did read the synopsis, and I'm like, the rest of this doesn't sound very familiar to me.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, they are just not suspenseful. You can kind of figure out what the twist is very quickly, and then, like, the first thing you think of is what the twist is. And I don't think Dan Kirkus does a lot to make those segments sing. And there's just something about this last one that's so simple and visceral that it has continuously freaked people out since 1972.
And it's also very funny too, because you've got this little, you know, kind of racist caricature doll.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It makes noises like a gremlin. At one point, it sounds like Beavis doing the fire.
That would cement this as the greatest cinematic achievement anyone had ever committed to film.
Exactly. I looked at the credits, absolutely certain this was going to be a Frank Welker, and it was not, surprisingly.
Surprisingly, not a Welker. It's a little early on the Welker count. He was just rising up the ranks on Scooby Doo. Uh, if only it had been a few years later. I mean, there's a lot of this that just feels very 1972. So, a bit of background. Trilogy of Terror, not a theatrical release here in the United States. It was actually broadcast as a TV movie on ABC on a Tuesday goddamn night, right? So you can only imagine Tuesday at 8:30, this thing starts. And it starts with a guy who's fantasizing about his college professor, and he drugs her, takes racy photos of her in a motel room, and then says, if we don't start to have sex on the regular, I'm going to post these and I'm blackmailing you. And she like kind of reluctantly goes along with it. And then just as this guy thinks he's finally got it over on her, it turns out she's poisoned him, and she lights him on fire in his own photography studio and says, I do this all the time. That like I seduce students and kill them all over the place. I just travel from college to do it. And you're kind of like, oh, okay. But where does the scary part happen? Where's the terror in this? That a college professor is just murking sexual pervs from college campus to college campus. I'm supposed to be afraid of this. I cheer this.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not scary. It's you go, girl.
And then the second one is a riff on sisters, in that there's one sister who's sexually repressed and one sister who wants to get it on with any hanging dick that happens to walk by. And it turns out it's the same fucking person. And you're like, that's the first thing I guessed. What am I supposed to be afraid of? That a lady can role play? I think I'm okay with this. And,
what we haven't mentioned yet, and surely some people will know this, but all three of the female leads in this are Karen Black, who is a very unique presence in 70s and 80s film and TV, and I say that in all sincerity. Like, there really aren't female character actors quite like her anymore.
No one has that face,
right? She has kind of a little wonky eye, which is interesting, because it kind of gives her the impression she's sort of kind of holding it together, barely.
Sure.
But yeah, she is a character actor in a way that doesn't really seem to exist anymore.
Right. Yeah, she kind of came out of the mid-60s theater scene in New York. And she is connected in so many ways to all of the film brat guys who basically take over the auteur-driven 70s in Hollywood. You got Francis Ford Coppola. She's in Easy Rider. She gets nominated for an Oscar for 5 Easy Pieces. Like, she's very much on the cusp of that sort of 70s blonde who you can see just like popping up in movie after movie after movie. But she's a little bit frustrated. She feels like she's in a box. She's only allowed to do dramas. And so she gets approached by Dan Curtis, who at this point was primarily known for the supernatural soap opera Dark Shadows. And just before this, he had directed a made-for-TV movie, which also has an incredible, lineage to it, which is the original Night Stalker. And he kind of goes, listen, I have the rights to these 3 Richard Matheson stories, and I think we could do what they're kind of doing in Britain with these anthology horror movies, but only you would play all the female roles. All the main roles would be played by you. You even get to play a split personality. And she's like, all right. Like, hey, I'm getting to do a lot of different things. I'm the victim. I'm the perpetrator. I'm playing conflicted roles here. And then the other part of this is Richard Matheson, who's perhaps one of the greatest idea people that has ever been in the horror genre. You can go from The Incredible Shrinking Man to I Am Legend, which of course, it has been made into 3 separate fucking movies. And of course, Duel, which is the rise of Steven Spielberg. If you combine that and, of course, Columbo, Prescription for Murder, which is a fantastic Columbo episode. So you have all these people kind of coming together to do this one thing. And I think this is probably the segment that they spent the least amount of money on because it's one location. You see her walking into an apartment building, and that's the last you see of the outside world. All of it is just the camera on her in one location and in a very large apartment for Los Angeles and a lot of doors that she can shut behind her.
And basically just someone throwing a puppet at her. There's great throwing puppet work in this movie.
If you love puppets being tossed, if you're like, I love it when a Muppet gets shot out of a cannon, this is the horror short for you because it's got a lot of wild and woolly arms and legs going. It's tossed by one grip to the other side of the room and back again. It should be noted that Amelia is adapted from the short story called Prey, which was first published in April of 1969 in Playboy magazine, a publication I only read for the horror short stories.
Of course. And the giant Quaalude paperweight.
a surface to do cocaine off of, Playboy magazine. So for whatever reason, Black then after this came out and was a rather tremendous rating success, regretted her choice of being a part of it to some degree. She felt that she was now going to be typecast in genre roles, which is weird because like after this, she does like Airport 74 and Nashville. Like these are not your typecast kind of roles. What I think what happened was she was such an interesting presence. And then you see her in a bunch of things and people are like, I don't know, this isn't a Karen Black role. They kind of put her in her own glass display case, as it were, and said, break only in case of Karen Black roles. I'm not entirely sure that this was the cause of her downfall or being typecast necessarily. I just think like when you need a Karen Black, there's only one person to call. And when you don't, you're probably not casting Karen Black.
Well, I suspect that what was her downfall was like a lot of actors, she just got too old and
True.
People didn't really, because I mean the roles got weirder as she got older.
Mm-hmm.
It was either be her or Sandy Dennis, who was another very similar type where she always seemed like her characters always seemed they were kind of hanging on by a thread.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She walks a high wire all the time emotionally. And this particular segment is filled with that because
it does a really good job in being economical with information, but it's just enough that you get the gist of what's going on.
And the other star, if we've introduced the Zuni fetish doll, we've introduced Karen Black. The third star of this particular segment is, of course, an apartment that is both the blandest thing you've ever seen and featuring some of the wildest fucking wallpaper ever committed to cinema screens. It is truly a commitment to choices.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at any picture, from the 70s, you're going to see some outrageous wallpaper decisions.
And this is filled to the brim with them, including a green shag carpet, which is disturbing in ways I can't really say out loud.
Just think of how much like cocaine crumbs are probably in that carpet.
Sure. So many loose quaaludes wrapped in the fibers. And but it starts off kind of all beige everything. And you're like, oh, this is kind of bland. And then every room you go to afterwards, you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, no. And then you have Karen Black, who is going into this. I guess Amelia as a character is caught between worlds. One is she is desperate to get beyond her very controlling mother, who dominates her Friday nights, apparently. And they can't like shift to Saturday. I can't quite understand. And it's also very clear they've mic'd the telephone that she has her conversations with both her boyfriend and her mother. And no one is speaking on the other side. It is a one-woman show here. And that one woman is Karen Black, who feels things physically.
Yeah, she's just kind of like, everything's on her face.
Yes. And her face is bugging out and going wild, and her eyes are twitching back and forth, and her wig is levitating over her forehead. It's a lot. But Amelia, it has turned out, has moved out from her mother's place, and she's trying to establish some form of independence. She's gained what appears to be a boyfriend, or at least someone she's dating regularly. And that boyfriend's birthday is coming up tonight on Friday night, and she has purchased him this Zuni fetish doll because he is an anthropology's professor of some kind.
I mean, that's the only reason I could see for buying this hideous doll for someone.
Yeah. A hideous doll that comes with instructions on a scroll. Now, when you hear scroll, do you think some sort of yellowed parchment? This appears to be something printed at Kinko's.
Yeah, it's very neatly done.
Yes. So someone has gone through a lot of trouble to put some serious fonts into this. And what it all comes down to is this is a Zuni fetish doll. It has trapped the soul of a hunter, and everything's going to be fine so long as the gold chain around its chest remains in place. That way its soul doesn't get loose. And wouldn't you know it, as she doesn't have this thing out of the box for longer than 5 minutes, says, I got to go take a bath. And that chain just fucking falls off.
I love it. She doesn't even touch it. It just like bloop. It just like falls off on its own.
Yeah. It's like somebody sold it to her with like, this shit's supposed to fall off tonight, and I choose you to take it home. It's not like she's deserving of what happens here. It's just the fickle finger of fate.
Yeah, it definitely seems like preordained that it's supposed to be her.
She puts it down on the coffee table. She goes off. She takes a bath. She spends the rest of the segment in a bathrobe, the beigest bathrobe that has ever been beige. She gets out of the bath.
In keeping with the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be beige. It was going to be burnt orange.
Yes. Well, the burnt orange is about to happen because this is when she walks into the kitchen, which is ordained with yellow and orange flowers and lime green curtains. And your eyes just don't know where to focus. It's too much, just too much. And luckily, the segment goes, wait a second. Let me give you something plain to look at. And she opens up this bare ass fridge, Gina. There is nothing in this fucking thing. Like, I was half expecting a mouse to be playing a harp on an old ham bone when she opened it.
Just, a little mouse family separating one bean into like 4 portions.
Exactly. Mice cutting beans. That is exactly the reference I was going for. But I chose another weird cartoon reference. But yes, that's essentially what it is. It's very bare. And she takes out one, it looks like a T-bone-esque steak, cuts some fat off the cap, puts it on a tray, and puts it in the fucking oven. She's baking a steak. There's no salt. There's no pepper. There's no oil of any sort. She's just like, $3.75 steak. That's dinner, baby.
So that'll do it, right? You cooked everything the same way: casserole, cereal, steak.
Well, this happens, as a result of her phoning her boyfriend and going, listen, I know we said we would go out for your birthday, but my mom is upset, so maybe we postpone. He's kind of like, it's my fucking birthday. That's what we pick up from her facial expressions. Um, and of course, but no, she can't cut loose from her mother. And I suppose the only thing that's going to allow her to do that is a rampaging Zuni fetish doll.
With it, who is possessed by the spirit of an Aboriginal warrior named He Who Kills, where it's like, wow, Richard Matheson, how long did it take you to come up with that name?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Richard Matheson, great idea guy. Not always the best thinker througher of those ideas, but an idea machine, man. He sits down at a typewriter and genius comes out on the page. And you're like, should I look at this with a fine-tooth comb? No. It's a short story. We don't have time for this. And I think it works for him for the most part. The closer you look at things, the more the details get wavy.
Just a little bit.
I did appreciate that this apartment has a skylight, meaning that her apartment that she is subletting is on the top fucking floor.
Yeah, I don't know what her current means of income is, but she's doing all right for herself.
Yeah, whatever she's doing.
Despite everybody, apparently treating her like this, fragile Tennessee Williams-esque flower.
Right. I mean, wherever she's working, she's undoubtedly getting barked at by a boss demanding coffee nonstop. Probably getting pinched in the ass in the middle of meetings and shit like that. So, she goes into the living room and notices that the doll is no longer on the coffee table and starts a 3-minute long probing examination of the couch and its surrounding environs, in which she doesn't so much look underneath the couch. She just sticks her hand underneath.
Hell no, absolutely not. And also, did no one give this poor woman a flashlight when she moved into her apartment?
No. And she's not about to start lighting candles at this point. Or tipping the couch a little bit, I think, is another great solution to this than blindly reaching under dark couches, getting stabbed once and thinking, what I need to do is come at this from reverse. She hears tiny footsteps running off in a different direction. And you don't have a fucking cat. So when you hear other footsteps in the apartment, that's a time to panic.
Yeah, at minimum, that is a rodent of some kind.
Right. A rodent running on 2 legs. But, if it's already cutting beans, you have a rodent problem that just goes beyond the normal, household problem, in my estimation. The other thing that I noticed in this apartment when she's searching around for this figure is that there are other, I've called them the Depression series by Hummel. They look like melted people praying or just wishing for death. They're not super interesting. They're very bland, but they're also so bland that I worry for her mental health or whoever's apartment she's subleased. They are very depressed.
Yeah, there's a very much that she is subleasing this apartment from Bob Newhart and the Bob Newhart Show.
Sure, yes. Well, while he's jaunted off to Chicago or New York or just
he went to go open his bed and breakfast in Vermont. Yeah.
Exactly. And so she hears these footsteps, but it doesn't quite register with her. And then the lamp in that room, which is the only light going on in the living room, goes out. And she's like, oh, the light bulb must have burnt out. Yes, that must be it. But she goes to test it and it doesn't turn on again, which prompts the question, Gina, does this ancient doll know how lamps work?
Well, considering that, the twist in the end is that it's the spirit that is trapped and it can possess people. I mean, right. I assume maybe it picked up some level of knowledge over the years.
Oh, So maybe it's like The Hidden. It's a body hopper.
Right.
It hops into various bodies, picks up knowledge. Then when those people get booked on murder, he's like, haha, back into the fetish
Exactly.
stall. Wait, he's like a little
so
lamp,
long,
but
suckers.
with a plan. Speaking of Muppets, when the Zuni doll attacks, I had forgotten how much it looks and acts like Animal from the Muppets.
Totally. It's Lisa. It's when I was a child. I don't think I saw this when I was a kid. But if I seen this when I was a kid, I would have thought this was terrifying. Now it's hilarious.
This reminds me a lot of the TV movie that I was obsessed with from 1973 called Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. And that features a couple and their child, and they buy this, house that's, selling for a bargain. Same old. And like the big warning they're given is like, don't take the wood off the fireplace. Like every night you have to have a fire. And for whatever reason, she's trying to light a fire and she takes the wood off of the mantelpiece, and these little creatures come out of the fireplace and steal her child. And she's desperately telling everybody, these creatures live in our house and they want my kid. And nobody listens to her. Husband's like, you need to go on some medication. It's a whole bunch of like, I don't listen to women happening. And then the final night, she battles these little creatures and she saves her child, but then she gets dragged down into the fireplace.
Oh no.
And it leaves you there. It's like, it's the 70s. Fuck you. It's done. Ending.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about 70s horror and like TV horror and all is that because they were, restricted on how much, violence they could actually show, they had to, they had to rely on, these kind of, scary single images. Like, a movie I talk about a lot is Salem's Lot. Which is there's not a drop of blood spilled in Salem's Lot, even despite it being about vampires. But you've got these indelible images. You've got Ralphie Glick hovering outside his brother's bedroom window. You've got the character Mike Ryerson in the rocking chair, which is just like that. I mean, why watch that now? Like, God damn, how'd they get away with this in 1979 network television? Because
it is very classic horror stuff. I mean, when that is the fucking thing, man. When people talk about, oh, he couldn't have directed Poltergeist. There's no way the Texas Chainsaw guy could have pulled this off. I'm like, motherfucker, you need to watch some of his other movies.
Salem's Lot is scary.
Scary as shit.
I mean, it was scary
and
when
it just
was scary
be.
when I was 7 years old and watched it for the first time because my parents didn't know what the fuck they were doing. And it is scary now. It is an extremely effective, movie and adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
But with Amelia, it reminds me a lot of the scene in Gremlins when they attack Billy's mom.
Yeah. Except Billy's mom really has some defense tactics.
Oh, she beats ass.
And here, Amelia cannot pull it together.
She just kind of flails and screams.
She doesn't even... It takes her forever to think, maybe I should have something else in my hands. She just keeps running into rooms and closing the door. And then the doll's like, oh, I know how to pick locks now.
That's what I'm talking about. That I think that it must, pick up information from jumping from body to body.
Right.
I do think it's funny that when she calls the cops at one point, she does stop herself from saying, oh, I'm being attacked by a doll. Yeah. Like, she's just like, oh, I need the police. just sends someone right away.
Just get the fuck over here.
Yeah, she's like, she knows it's crazy. I think that's a nice touch.
She finally, like, when she finally puts together, like, I need to defend myself in some way, shape, or form, she grabs a towel and starts beating it on the ground, which, again, inanimate object. Like, I don't think it feels pain or anything like that. But then she's like, oh, I'll drown you. This motherfucker does not need oxygen, okay?
No, you throw it out the window. I mean, if she's on the presumably top floor of the building she's in, that thing just needs to get flanged out the window.
Yes, but she can't open a window. When she attempts to open a window, it's because it's a high rise. It's a window she can't open. So she's really desperate at various points in this. And then she has the best idea, which is to trap this fucking thing inside a Samsonite suitcase.
I love when it launches itself at the suitcase. That's such a great scene. I love it.
And she snaps it closed and locks it and is like, all right, listen, it may have sliced open my Achilles tendon and I'm losing a couple of toes and my fingers are falling off, but it's contained. That's when she tries to open up a window, because throw that fucking suitcase out there. You can buy another suitcase. But no, she has underestimated the power of that steak knife, because not only can it pick locks, but it can also saw through a fucking suitcase that men in gorilla suits can't open. So it's really tough.
I mean, it's got, of course, one of those great, moments where the audience is intended to yell at the screen, because, when she sees that it's sawing through the suitcase with this little knife, she decides to just come back and watch it do it. Yeah. Which I'm like, no, he's giving you a window to try to escape. Right. Use it.
But she's like, I don't understand how door locks work. Come on. Like, at a certain point, you kind of want her to die, simply because how can you fucking be so stupid at this point? Like, put a trash can over it and some books on top. You have got to find a way to contain this fucking thing. It saws its way out of the suitcase. She runs into the kitchen. Of course, it somehow puts its arm in between the door and the door jamb. This somehow means that she can't close the door. It's incredibly strong, whatever it is. She finally, it gets in and she zigzags, opens up the oven door where her steak is now, that steak is overbaked 100%. But she dips and dives. This thing goes over her head into the oven. She closes the door. And the amount of black smoke that pours out of this oven, Gina.
And it's just like
that doll's oven safe.
And again, I do honestly think that Joe Dante was inspired in some way by this, because you've got that scene where the really gross scene in Gremlins where she puts it in the microwave.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
It's like, what is that? What if I recreated that, but used like slime and goop?
Yeah, exactly. Again, a movie that is relatively bloodless, and yet, it makes up for it by amping up the gross goo factor. It is
still disgusting.
Yeah. But for whatever reason, while she's breathing a sigh, a 45-second long sigh of relief, and you see various shots of this doll on fire inside the oven, she's like, all right, now I'm going to open up the door and just see what's happening. Maybe I can salvage that steak. I'm hungry now.
I can wipe off the charred wooden hair from the doll on it.
Exactly. And she just screams and it goes to black. Commercial. Like, that must have been the hardest commercial break on the face of the planet. It comes back and she picks up the phone and calls her mother and says, I thought about it. Why don't you come over? We'll go out on the town. And you're like, okay, that's a strange reaction to this. She goes over to the front door. She breaks the lock with her bare fingers. So now she has super strength. You're like, uh-oh. She walks back 2 paces, crouches, knees akimbo, takes out the largest steak knife and just starts hitting the floor, chopping at the floor, and bears a grin. And now she has the doll's crazy teeth. And that's the end of this. And my guess is many children slept in their parents' bed that night.
Yeah, I mean, this must have been very effective. But you said this was 1972.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see where this would be very effective. Again, from a modern perspective, it's very hokey. But I'm trying to think in terms of when TV horror was still very very bland.
Yeah.
And how people must have viewed this.
I have to imagine that it pretty much did a whammy on people, and then this was one of those things that they would rerun over and over again. And I ended up seeing it as an afternoon movie, a 4:30 movie on ABC. So like it kind of lived forever. I to the point where people just don't remember those first 2 segments exist.
Yeah,
if you talk about Trilogy of Terror, the only thing people remember is this segment.
It's like Trilogy of Terror. That was just one story, right? Isn't it weird that it was called Trilogy of Terror?
Does the doll like visit 3 separate people? The other thing that I'm sure modern audiences would have difficulty with is that they've seen a lot of this in other places. You've now seen a Gremlins, you've seen a Child's Play Chucky, you've seen this type of thing in a bunch of other films. Whereas at this point, you kind of only like, I'm trying to think, there's that Twilight Zone with the Christmas robot who shoots real bullets at the lady.
Right.
And then, in book form, there's that one Stephen King story where the professional assassin gets sent this package of little army men, and then the little army men come to life and he has to battle little army men.
Yeah. And then like this story, that they win.
Yeah. Yes. And they take him apart in grisly fashion. Like he loses limbs and toes.
And they just blowed him up real good at the end of the story.
It's pretty awesome. Trilogy of Terror has had a couple physical releases. It's currently out of print, but you can find it in several places on YouTube. It occasionally will show up on a Shudder or an Amazon as well. So it's out there.
This segment is on YouTube.
Yes. The whole thing's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Several places. But yes, you can just watch this or you can fast forward to Amelia. And I would highly recommend it if you haven't already, because I think it's a fun piece of ephemera, and it's 20 minutes and it's done.
Yeah, it's no extra fat. Like I said, it gives you through one telephone conversation, it tells you everything you need to know about Amelia's relationship with her mother, and and it kind of leaves it open that mom's going to come over and Amelia's going to go on her, which would be hilarious.
Yes, certainly. And then there was a Trilogy of Terror sequel in the 90s that I have not watched and don't think I will.
I did not know this.
Yes, it's something that exists, but I don't know that I want to engage with it because I don't believe anyone involved in the first one was involved with the second one. So that leaves something to be desired. So that just about does it. Josh Hollis does all of our artwork. As far as our music goes, you can get this remix and our main theme and all the others if you go to Revenge Body Memphis at bandcamp.com. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and television at thespool.net. I have a Substack. It's GinaWatchesThings.substack.com, and I am on Twitter till the bitter end under Gina Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. Of course, you can find us on all the socials, but more importantly, you can join us over on Patreon, where we're giving you 3 bonus shows every single month. That is more content than you could ever possibly want. No rational person would ever sign up for it, but you're not rational. You're listening to Kill by Kill. We have Chat by Chat, where we have a general Q&A session and just talk about what we're watching, reading, and so forth. Of course, we have our bonus episodes every other month. Listeners get to choose what we watch. Last month, we chose to watch Spasms, and Gina is still recovering from watching Oliver Reed sweat that much in one movie.
pouring out of him.
Ribbons of Moisture. And of course, we have our commentary series. We watched all the Halloween movies, and now we're watching the Friday the 13th. And yes, we watched Friday the 13th Part 5 and lived to see another day. And that just about does it. Don't worry, folks. The body count will continue. Next week, we'll be back with a regular episode. And we'll see you then for myself and Virginia. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.